In the heart of the village of Ezo, where the sun hung low over endless savannas, Amina's eyes always wandered beyond the familiar fields. Life in the village was simple and hard, with days spent toiling in the fields, trading in the markets, and gathering by the fire at night. But Amina's heart longed for more. She dreamed of a life beyond these dusty roads, of wealth and grandeur, of living without limits. Her older brother Azibo, however, was a man of practicality. He was protective of Amina and always kept her grounded, reminding her that dreams, like the winds, could lead one astray. But Amina was determined, even if it meant pushing the boundaries of their peaceful village life. It was on an afternoon like any other, with the heat of the sun beating down on the earth, that something extraordinary happened. A stranger appeared in the village. His arrival was nothing like any of the travelers who passed through Ezo. This man was tall, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see straight through people. His clothes were fine, adorned with intricate patterns, and his presence was magnetic. He didn't just walk into the village, he commanded attention. The villagers gathered around him, drawn to his charm and the air of mystery that seemed to surround him. With a voice like smooth velvet, he spoke of something called the dream trade. He claimed to possess the ability to grant the dreams of anyone who sought them. Wealth, power, influence, whatever a person desired, he could give it to them. But there was a catch, as always with such promises. He spoke in riddles, teasing them with hints of the price they'd have to pay. It was a price, he said, that would leave a mark, something precious that would be lost forever in exchange for the life they'd always wanted. When Amina approached, the stranger's eyes lingered on her, as if he saw the yearning in her soul. "You, young one, have dreams far greater than these fields can give," he said, his words like a whisper in her mind. "I can make you the wealthiest woman in the land. Imagine living a life of luxury, power, and influence. But first, you must decide what you are willing to give up in return for this dream." Amina stood frozen, her heart racing. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Could this be the answer to all her hopes? But what would she have to sacrifice? She glanced at Azibo, who was watching from a distance, his face filled with doubt. The air between them grew thick with tension. What if this man wasn't what he seemed? Yet, the vision of a life beyond the village tugged at Amina's heart. Would she dare to make the trade? Or would she listen to her brother's warnings and walk away from the stranger's tempting offer? As the crowd murmured, waiting for Amina's decision, the stranger's smile never wavered. His eyes gleamed with the knowledge of the consequences she would face, but would she understand them in time? The suspense hung heavy in the air, and Amina was left to grapple with the most important choice of her life. That evening, the village was bathed in the soft glow of the stars, the crackling of the campfire filling the air with warmth. The villagers had gathered around, their faces illuminated by the flickering light, as the mysterious stranger sat in the center, waiting for the next soul willing to trade their heart's deepest wish. Amina sat at the edge of the crowd, her fingers nervously tracing the worn edges of her mother's necklace, the only thing of value she had left from her family. The heirloom had been passed down through generations, its golden chain carrying memories of those long gone. But tonight, as the stranger's voice echoed through the night, those memories felt distant. And a new desire stirred in her heart. The longing for a life beyond the village, for wealth and influence, had grown too strong to ignore. As the stranger's eyes met hers, something in his gaze seemed to pull at her. He knew what she wanted, and his smile deepened, sensing her hesitation. "What will you give for the life you dream of?" he asked, his voice like silk and honey. Amina's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she thought of Azibo's warnings, the words he had spoken so many times. But the dreams, the life she could have, danced in her mind, and the necklace, the only thing of true value she owned, suddenly felt like the perfect price to pay. With a trembling hand, she removed it from her neck and held it out to the stranger. "I offer you this," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. The stranger's smile widened, a knowing gleam in his eyes. He reached forward, his hand cold against her skin as he placed it over her chest. He spoke words that were foreign to Amina's ears, a language that seemed to echo through her very soul. A chill ran down her spine, but she was too entranced by the vision of the life that awaited her to notice the dark shadow that lingered in the stranger's gaze. When he finished, he stepped back, and for a moment, everything fell silent. The villagers watched, their faces a mix of awe and curiosity. Then, as if nothing had happened, the night carried on, and Amina felt a strange sense of peace wash over her, as if she had just sealed her fate. The next morning, Amina awoke in a luxurious bed, the sunlight streaming through the windows of a grand mansion. Her heart raced as she touched the soft silks that draped over her body. She had never seen such fine clothes before, robes of gold and deep blue, like something from a dream. She could hardly believe it. The life she had always longed for had arrived. A servant entered her room and handed her an invitation to a grand banquet in the city. Her eyes widened in disbelief. This was it. Her dream had come true. As the evening unfolded, however, the excitement began to fade. The banquet hall was opulent, filled with laughter and music, but Amina couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. The guests, dressed in the finest silks and jewelry, greeted her with cold politeness, their smiles sharp and insincere. They didn't see her as a person, they saw her as a pawn, someone to impress their peers or use to their advantage. The power and wealth she had imagined felt hollow. The warmth of the village, the bonds of family, and the simple joy of community seemed like a distant memory. She wandered through the halls, searching for something real, but all she found were shallow conversations and empty smiles. A sense of unease gnawed at her. Was this truly the life she had wanted? She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Every glance from the guests felt like an inspection. Every whisper carried a sense of judgment. The stranger's words echoed in her mind. To live a dream, you must pay the price. But what is the cost of the dreams of others? The weight of the question settled heavily on her chest. Had she truly traded for a dream, or had she become a tool in someone else's game? The banquet felt like a trap, and Amina couldn't help but feel the stranger's presence watching her from the shadows, a reminder that nothing ever comes without a cost. Days later, when Amina finally returned to the village, it was as if the place had aged years in the short time she had been gone. The once bustling community, full of laughter and activity, now seemed quiet and distant. The fields, which had always been lush and green, were now barren, with crops wilting under the hot sun. The air felt heavy with a strange, oppressive silence. It was as if the very life of the village had been sucked away, leaving only a shadow behind. Amina's heart sank. She had returned to what felt like a ghost town, and the guilt gnawed at her. She had everything she wanted, wealth, luxury, and influence, but at what cost? Her first stop was to see Azibo, her older brother, who had always been her protector. She found him lying in bed, his face pale and his body weak. His feverish eyes met hers, but there was no joy in his gaze, only a deep sadness. "Amina," he whispered hoarsely, "you have to see what's happening. It's not just the land. It's us, we're fading." Amina's stomach churned. She had noticed the signs, the sickness in the village, the failing crops, but hearing it from Azibo made the truth hit her like a hammer. She looked around the room, the walls of their home now cracked and decaying. The same decay was everywhere she went. The village was crumbling, and it seemed as if the very heart of it was dying. Azibo's words hit her like a cold wind. "The stranger, he didn't just take your necklace. He's taken more than that. He's taking everything from us." Amina's breath caught in her throat. She stared at Azibo, her mind racing. What was he talking about? But before she could ask, Azibo coughed violently, struggling to sit up. His voice dropped to a whisper. "He came to me, too. He offered me the same deal. I saw the danger, Amina. I refused. But you've given him a part of yourself, and he's been selling dreams to others. With every deal he makes, he takes something more. The crops, our health, our souls, he's draining it all." Amina's world tilted. She felt dizzy, the weight of Azibo's words crushing her chest. She had been so focused on her own dreams, on her own desires, that she hadn't seen the price the village was paying. And now, with each person who made a deal, the stranger was getting stronger, feeding off their hopes, their possessions, and their very life force. Amina's hands trembled as she clenched them into fists. She wasn't just a victim in this story, she was part of the cycle. Every wish granted, every dream bought, only made the stranger more powerful. She had unknowingly given him the key to draining everything from her world. Amina knew one thing for certain. She couldn't just stand by and watch her village, her family, and herself crumble away. But the question was, how? She had no idea how to undo the damage, how to break the cycle. The stranger's hold on her was deep, and his power seemed impossible to fight. But she couldn't let him win, not when she could still feel the pulse of life in her community, even if it was weak. She had to find a way, no matter the cost. Time was running out. Amina searched for the stranger, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and guilt. She needed answers. She had to know the truth, even if it meant confronting the dark reality of the deal she had made. She found him at the edge of the forest, exactly where he had first appeared in her life. The tall, mysterious figure stood there, his back turned to her, the same cold aura surrounding him. The forest seemed darker here, the air heavier, as if the very earth held its breath. Amina marched up to him, her heart racing. "What have you done to my village? My family?" she demanded, her voice shaky but strong. The stranger turned slowly, a knowing smile on his face. his eyes gleaming with an unsettling calm. I have done nothing, child. I merely trade in dreams. Dreams come at a cost, and the price is always paid. I give them what they desire, and in return, I take something of value. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in. I am not human. I am a spirit of the forest, bound to this world. I exist because of the dreams people seek. The more dreams I trade, the stronger I become. But if no one desires them, I cease to exist. Amina felt a chill run down her spine as the truth sank in. She was not the only one who had paid a price. The village, the land, even her family, everything had been drained in exchange for the power she now held. The stranger's power grew with each deal, and with every person who bought into his dream, a piece of their life force was taken. Her wealth, her success, her new life, none of it was truly hers. It had all been built on the suffering of her people, her own family. She was complicit in their pain. Before she could say anything, a familiar voice broke through the silence. Amina, don't. It was Azibo, staggering from the trees, his face pale and desperate. You can't trade with him again. If you do, you'll only bring more suffering. The more you take from him, the more you give away. He will destroy everything, and you won't be able to stop it. Amina's heart raced as she looked at her brother. He was right, she had already lost so much. But the stranger's offer now echoed in her mind. The power, the influence, the life she had dreamed of, it was all within reach, just one more deal. Could she turn it all away? Could she give up everything she had gained, even if it meant losing her family and everything else? The stranger spoke once more, his voice smooth and persuasive. You have a choice, Amina. Accept the deal, and I will give you even greater power, more wealth than you can imagine. You will never have to worry again. Your family will be safe, and your dreams will be realized. Or refuse, and I will take everything away, your wealth, your success, your happiness. And your village will continue to wither, your family will suffer. The weight of the choice pressed down on her chest like a boulder. What was more important to her, the dreams she had longed for or the lives she had almost destroyed in the process? Would she trade her soul for her desires, or would she stand up for the people she loved, even if it meant giving up everything she had gained? Amina was torn. The stranger's words filled her with temptation, but Azibo's warning echoed in her ears. Time was running out, and the consequences of her decision would shape the future of her family, her village, and even herself. Could she find a way to undo the damage she had caused without losing it all? The choice was hers, and the stakes had never been higher. Amina stood at the edge of the forest, her heart pounding in her chest as the wind whispered through the trees. The air felt heavy, charged with the weight of the decision she had to make. Beside her, Azibo's eyes were filled with worry, his face pale from the exhaustion of the long journey. The stranger loomed behind them. A dark figure bathed in the shadows of the forest, his presence both eerie and powerful. He had been waiting for this moment, knowing that Amina would eventually face the choice that could change everything. With a deep breath, Amina turned to the stranger. I reject your offer. I no longer want the dreams you've sold me. I give them back, everything, the wealth, the power, the fame. I want my village and my family to be free from the price I've paid. I want to undo the harm I've caused. Her voice trembled, but her resolve was clear. She had made her decision, and she would face whatever came with it. She wasn't going to be part of this cycle any longer. The stranger's face twisted with rage. His eyes burned with fury as he stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You think you can undo what's been done? You cannot. The price for rejecting your dreams is far worse than you can imagine. You will lose everything, your wealth, your power, and even your memories. You will forget everything you've ever known. Your identity will vanish. Are you willing to pay such a price? His words hung in the air, his presence growing darker, more menacing with every passing second. Amina stood firm, her heart heavy but resolute. She wasn't afraid to give up everything, if it meant saving her family and her village. But as the stranger's powers swirled around her, something terrifying began to happen. She felt a pull at her very core, as if something inside her was being ripped away. Her memories, her life, started to blur. The faces of her family, the warmth of the village, even the feeling of the earth beneath her feet, everything started slipping through her fingers like sand. She could feel herself fading, her identity being drained with each passing second. Then, just as Amina's vision began to darken, Azibo stepped forward, his voice shaking with urgency. Amina, he cried. Don't let him take you. But his words barely reached her. She could feel herself disappearing, the last fragments of her being stolen by the stranger's dark magic. With one final desperate cry, Azibo lunged at the stranger, placing his hands on his sister's shoulders. He whispered, I can't let you lose everything, Amina. Not after all you've done to fix it. He closed his eyes and, in a final act of love and sacrifice, gave up his own life force. The power of his sacrifice rushed through the air, colliding with the stranger's dark energy, and in that moment, the stranger screamed in agony. His power, once overwhelming, began to crumble. The dreams he had sold evaporated like smoke in the wind, leaving nothing behind but a faint, eerie echo. The stranger's form began to flicker and fade, and with a final, defeated cry, he vanished into the forest. Amina collapsed into Azibo's arms, her head spinning, but her memories flooding back, slowly at first, then in a rush. She remembered everything, the village, her family, and her choices. Azibo had saved her, but at a great cost. She looked at him, her heart aching with gratitude and sorrow. He had sacrificed his life for hers. The forest was silent now, the air no longer heavy with dark magic. The village was safe, but the price had been paid. Amina, free from the stranger's grip, could finally begin to rebuild, but the loss of her brother would forever haunt her. Yet in his sacrifice, she had learned the true cost of the dreams she had once sought so desperately. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, she vowed to protect the village and honor Azibo's sacrifice for the rest of her days. Amina awoke with a heavy heart, the morning light filtering through her small window, but it didn't feel as warm as it used to. The village of Azibo was alive again. The fields were green, the crops were growing, and the villagers' laughter echoed through the streets as they worked together, rebuilding what had been lost. But inside her, there was an emptiness that nothing could fill. Her brother, the one who had given his life to save hers, to save their village, was now nothing more than a memory. And that memory haunted her every day. She walked through the village, seeing the faces of the people she had once known, the faces she had almost doomed with her desire for a dream. They smiled at her, grateful for her efforts in undoing the stranger's magic, but Amina could sense their quiet sadness. They, too, knew the cost of what had happened. They were rebuilding their lives. But they would never forget the price they had paid. Neither would she. There were no more dreams of wealth or power. The riches she had once craved were gone, the grand life she had imagined now a distant, unreal fantasy. But Amina knew that she had to rebuild her life, not with gold or luxury, but with the love of the people around her. She spent her days working in the fields, helping her neighbors, and offering what little she had left. The village had shown her the true value of community, and she had learned that no dream could ever be worth the destruction it could bring. Despite the return of normalcy, there was a shadow that still loomed over the village. Amina had heard whispers, rumors of strangers, other travelers who came offering dreams to those who were desperate. She couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger she had encountered wasn't the only one of his kind. Could there be more of them, silently weaving their magic in the background? As Amina watched the sun set over the village, she couldn't help but wonder, was the story truly over, or had it only just begun? Would there be another sacrifice, another price to pay for the dreams people so eagerly chased? The thought lingered in her mind, a question without an answer. The price of a dream was never as simple as it seemed, and Amina knew that she would carry the weight of that truth for the rest of her life.